The road into Dry Creek was a ribbon of dust and memory, stretching endlessly beneath a sky too wide to hide from the past. Miles Harrington slowed his black SUV as the town emerged from the heat haze. Weathered buildings, leaning fences, broken signage bleached by decades of sun. Once, Dry Creek had been a place of laughter and work, of families and Friday nights. Now it stood half-forgotten, clinging to existence like an old wound that refused to heal. Miles cut the engine. The silence was deafening. He stepped out, expensive boots crunching against gravel that hadn't known care in years. The wind swept through the street, lifting dust into the air as if the land itself was breathing him in, judging him. This was where it all began. This was where it all went wrong. 25 years ago, his father's name had arrived here like a promise. Jobs, growth, progress. Then came the deal signed behind closed doors, the land seized under legal loopholes, the mine that poisoned the creek and dried the soil. When the Harrington Corporation pulled out, they left nothing behind but broken families and a town that never recovered. And Miles had inherited all of it. The empire, the money, the guilt. He adjusted his jacket, though the heat was relentless. Power had taught him control of markets, of men, of fear. But standing here, none of that mattered. Dry Creek didn't care who he was now. It remembered who his family had been. He walked down Main Street, past the old saloon with shattered windows and faded posters still clinging to the walls. Across the street stood the abandoned general store, its door hanging crooked, as if frozen mid-escape. Miles stopped there, staring at the peeling paint. His father used to say this place was necessary collateral. Miles clenched his jaw. At the far end of the street, movement caught his eye. A woman stood near a rusted fence, the sun burning gold against her hair as it whipped in the wind. She was dressed simply. Boots worn by work, denim faded by time. But she stood with a defiance that made the land around her feel alive again. She wasn't afraid of him. She was waiting. Miles felt it in his chest. A pull he didn't understand yet. Wren Calder, the last holdout. The woman who refused every offer, every threat, every polite legal letter from his company. The woman who still owned the land his father had failed to take completely. Their eyes met across the empty street. In that moment, the past roared back to life. Wren's gaze held no awe, no curiosity. Only recognition and something sharper. Anger, memory, truth. So this is Harrington, her eyes seemed to say. Miles took a step forward, then another. His presence cutting through the silence like a confession he wasn't ready to make. The wind howled between them, carrying dust and regret. "I didn't come to fight," he said when he was close enough for his voice to carry. Wren crossed her arms. "Men like you always do. You just call it something else." Her words landed hard. Miles exhaled slowly. "I came because this place deserves better than what my family left behind." She laughed short, bitter, unamused. Better? Or cheaper? He had no answer. The truth was, he didn't know which side of the line he stood on anymore. Behind him, Dry Creek groaned in the heat, a town suspended between decay and defiance. Ahead of him stood the one woman who could force him to face everything he'd spent his life outrunning. Miles Harrington had returned to reclaim land. But as he looked into Wren Calder's unyielding eyes, he realized something far more dangerous. Dry Creek wasn't done with him yet, and neither was his past. Sometimes the road home isn't about ownership, it's about reckoning. The land behind Wren Calder's house stretched wide and stubborn, a scarred but breathing thing. Dry grass bent beneath the wind. Fence posts leaned at tired angles. The creek, what little remained of it, cut a thin, defiant line through cracked earth. Wren stood at its edge every morning. It was the first thing she did before the day demanded her strength. Before anger, before memory. This land had raised her. It had buried her father. And it carried the truth everyone else preferred to forget. Miles Harrington arrived just after noon. His SUV rolled up the dirt road like a mistake that knew it was expensive. The engine cut, leaving only the hum of cicadas and the whisper of wind. Wren didn't turn around. She kept her gaze on the creek, on the water that no longer ran clear. I told your lawyers no, she said calmly. Miles stepped out, jacket draped over his arm this time, sleeves rolled as if he were trying too hard to look human. I'm not here as a lawyer. She finally faced him. Men like you always are. The silence between them felt heavy, charged with everything unsaid. Miles studied her. The sun-worn skin, the grit in her eyes, the way she stood like the land itself belonged to her bones. This property sits on a mineral line, he said carefully. If developed responsibly, it could bring work back to Dry Creek. Schools, infrastructure, water treatment. Wren's laugh was sharp. That's exactly what your father said. The name hung in the air like smoke. Miles swallowed. I'm not my father. No, she said, stepping closer. You're worse, because you know what he did, and you still benefit from it. Her words hit with precision. No shouting, no drama, just truth sharpened by time. This land isn't for sale, she continued. Not for your money, not for your apologies, and definitely not for your vision of responsibility. Miles felt something tighten in his chest. You don't even know what I'm offering. I know enough, she replied. You're offering a future built on erasing the past. She walked past him, boots crunching over dirt, leading him toward a weathered wooden marker near the creek. It was small, easy to miss. Agrave. My father died here, Wren said quietly. Not from age, not from sickness, from poisoned water your company left behind. Miles stared at the marker. He hadn't known. The guilt he carried deepened, heavier now, sharper, personal. Why didn't you tell anyone? He asked. I did, she said. No one listened. She turned to face him again, eyes blazing. This land holds proof. Soil samples, records, witnesses. The truth your company buried when it left. Miles understood then. This wasn't just property. It was evidence. And Wren Calder was its guardian. 11-inch you think I'm protecting this land because it's valuable, she said. I'm protecting it because it remembers. And if I sell it to you, that truth disappears forever. Miles shook his head slowly. I don't want to erase it. Then walk away, she said. If you mean what you say, leave. The wind surged between them, lifting her hair, filling the space with dust and challenge. For the first time in his life, Miles faced something money couldn't negotiate. Walking away would cost him the project, the board's trust, possibly his empire. Staying would mean war with his own legacy. He met her gaze. I won't buy your land, he said quietly. Wren didn't soften. I didn't ask you not to want it, she replied. I asked you not to take it. Miles nodded. Then let me earn the right to stand here. Her expression flickered. Not forgiveness, not acceptance. Something more dangerous. Curiosity. You've got one chance, Harrington, she said. This land doesn't forgive easily. As he drove away, the dust settling behind him like a warning, Miles realized something terrifying and exhilarating all at once. For the first time in his life, he wanted something he couldn't purchase. And the woman who guarded it might be the one thing that could destroy him or save him. Because some land isn't measured in acres. It's measured in truth. And truth, once unearthed, changes everything. Miles Harrington had closed billion-dollar deals in glass towers overlooking cities that never slept. He had shaken hands that changed markets, signed contracts that erased competitors, and smiled through negotiations designed to break weaker men. None of that prepared him for Wren Calder. They met again 3 days later, not on her land, but in the only cafe Dry Creek still had. The kind of place where coffee came strong, black, and honest, and where strangers were noticed the moment they walked in. Miles chose the booth by the window, not because it was comfortable, but because Wren would see him there. She arrived with dust on her boots and defiance in her eyes. She didn't sit. Say what you came to say, she told him. Miles gestured to the seat across from him. Just hear me out. Wren crossed her arms. That's usually how bad decisions begin. A muscle jumped in his jaw. He reached into his jacket. Not for a contract, not for paperwork, but for a slim folder worn at the edges. I looked into your father, he said. The air shifted. His reports, Miles continued. Water samples. Complaints that disappeared. He wasn't wrong. Wren's fingers tightened at her sides. You don't get to say his name like that. I know, Miles replied quietly. But I do get to admit this, what happened here was covered up. And my family benefited. The cafe seemed to fade around them. I can't undo it, he said. But I can expose it. Wren's laugh was soft and cutting. Expose yourself? Miles leaned forward. Partner with me. Not a purchase. Not a takeover. A legal trust. Your land stays yours. We bring the truth forward together. For the first time, Wren hesitated. He saw it, the flicker of temptation, dangerous and brief. And what do you get? She asked. Redemption, he said honestly. And a chance to do something right. She stared at him for a long moment. Then she shook her head. No. Miles blinked. You didn't even ask for the details. I don't need them, she said. Because deals come with leverage. And leverage always turns into control. This one doesn't have to. It always does, she snapped. You think because you feel guilty you suddenly get to stand beside me? My father died fighting men like you. The words hit harder than any rejection he'd known. This isn't pride, she continued. It's survival. Every man who ever helped this town walked away richer while we buried our dead. Miles held her gaze. Then let me prove I'm different. She leaned closer, eyes blazing. You don't get proof without trust. And trust isn't something you can earn with paperwork. Silence stretched. Finally, she turned to leave. This deal? She said over her shoulder. It never was. The bell above the cafe door rang as she stepped back into the sun. Miles remained seated, staring at the untouched coffee between his hands. For the first time, a deal had collapsed not because of numbers but because of history. And for the first time in his life, he didn't feel angry. He felt challenged. Outside, Wren paused only once, her breath tight in her chest. Because refusing him hadn't been easy. Because part of her, the reckless, hopeful part she kept buried, had wanted to believe him. But belief was dangerous. And so was Miles Harrington. What neither of them knew yet was this. That clash in a dusty cafe was not the end. It was the beginning of a war between past and future, and a fire neither of them was ready to control. The land remembered everything. Miles felt it the moment he stepped onto Calder soil, an unspoken weight beneath his boots, as if the earth itself was holding its breath. The sun hovered low, painting the dry plains gold, but there was nothing warm about the place. This was not just land. It was testimony. Wren hadn't invited him. That alone should have stopped him. But guilt has a way of pushing men forward when pride would tell them to turn back. Miles parked his truck near the old fence line, the one still marked by rusted wire and weather-worn posts. Beyond it stood the Calder homestead, leaning, scarred, stubbornly standing, much like the woman who owned it. He walked slowly, eyes drawn to the creek bed cutting through the property. Dry now, cracked, lifeless. This was where it had happened. He remembered the headlines from years ago, back when he was still young enough to believe his father could do no wrong. Industrial accident claims local farmland. Water contamination dispute settled out of court. Settled. A word that had sounded clean then. It sounded rotten now. Miles crouched near the creek, brushing his fingers over the soil. The ground was chalky, dead in a way healthy land never was. His chest tightened. You shouldn't be here. Wren's voice cut through the quiet. He stood, turning slowly. She was a few yards away, hat low over her eyes, rifle slung across her shoulder. Not threatening, but not welcoming either. I needed to see it, he said. Her jaw set. See what your family did? Yes. She studied him for a long moment, then finally nodded toward the creek. My father called it the wound. Said the land was bleeding. Miles swallowed. He found out the runoff wasn't accidental, she continued. The dumping happened at night, quietly, signed off by men who never planned to live here. Miles felt the words land like blows. My father signed those approvals. he said softly. Wren's expression didn't change. I know. That surprised him. I've known since I was 17, she went on. He tried to stop it, filed complaints, took samples. That's when the pressure started. Inspections, threats, a settlement that came with silence. Miles closed his eyes. And when he refused, he asked. They called it an accident, she said. A tank rupture. One bad night. The wind moved through the dry grass like a whisper of the past. My father collapsed 2 years later, Wren continued. Lung failure. Doctors wouldn't say it out loud. But we knew. Miles looked at the ground, shame burning hot in his chest. He paid off the town council, Wren said. Bought up properties. Promised jobs that never came. And when the Calders wouldn't sell, we were left to rot. I didn't know, Miles said. I believe that, she replied. That's the worst part. He met her gaze then, really met it. My father built his empire on this, Miles said. And I inherited it without asking where the foundation came from. Silence fell between them. Finally, Wren reached into her jacket and pulled out a folded envelope. Old, faded. My father wrote letters, she said. To regulators, journalists, courts. She handed one to him. They were never answered. Miles unfolded the paper carefully, reading words written by a man who had known the cost of truth. His hands trembled. This isn't just a ghost, Miles said hoarsely. It's a crime. Wren's voice softened. Not forgiving, but honest. And ghosts don't stay buried forever. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the ruined creek bed. For the first time since returning to Dry Creek, Miles understood the depth of what he'd inherited. Not wealth, but blood-stained silence. And for the first time, Wren saw something new in him. Not a billionaire, not a buyer. A man standing on the wreckage of his father's sins, finally willing to look down. The past had risen, and it wasn't asking for money. It was demanding the truth. The deed was never meant to be found. Wren discovered it by accident on a morning when the wind howled low across Dry Creek, stirring dust like restless spirits. She had gone down into the cellar beneath the homestead, chasing the familiar ache of memory, the kind that surfaced when the past pressed too hard on the present. The cellar smelled of damp earth and old wood. Crates sat stacked against stone walls, their labels faded, their contents long forgotten. This place had once been her father's refuge, where he kept records, tools, and secrets he didn't trust to daylight. Wren knelt beside a loose plank near the back wall, one her father had always insisted remain untouched. Leave it be, he'd warned her once. Some things are safer buried. She pried it open anyway. Beneath the plank was a rusted tin box, wrapped in oilcloth, sealed with a padlock so old it cracked apart when she tugged at it. Her breath caught as she opened the lid. Inside lay papers, maps, handwritten notes, and a deed. Her hands shook as she unfolded it. The name Calder Family Trust was written clearly across the top. But beneath it, etched in legal ink like a blade, was another name. Harrington Industrial Holdings. Wren's pulse roared in her ears. This wasn't a sale agreement. It was a conditional transfer, land rights signed decades ago, long before the contamination, long before the so-called accident. The land beneath Dry Creek had been leased, quietly and legally, for underground storage. Chemical storage. Her father had known. Worse, he had signed under pressure. Her breath came shallow as she read the margin notes. Dates, coordinates, and a final clause that chilled her blood. Upon environmental compromise, liability shall be transferred to the landowner. They hadn't just poisoned the land. They had planned it, and they had made the Calders legally responsible. Wren sank onto the cellar floor, her back against the stone wall, heart hammering. Her father hadn't been careless. He'd been trapped. A sharp knock sounded above. Miles? She hadn't heard his truck. She climbed the stairs slowly, her mind racing, and opened the cellar door to find him standing in the kitchen, hat in hand, eyes uneasy. I came to apologize, he said, for yesterday, for all of it. She didn't answer. She crossed the room, pulled the deed from the folder and handed it to him. Read. His brow furrowed as he scanned the page. Then his face went pale. No, he whispered. This can't be real. It is, she said. Your family didn't just take the land. They buried their poison under it. And when it leaked, they blamed us. Miles read the clause again, disbelief turning to fury. My father used a shell trust, he said slowly. It hid the transfer from public record. He made it look like your family was responsible for the damage. Wren's voice broke. He destroyed us. Miles looked up, eyes dark with something far more dangerous than anger, resolve. This changes everything, he said. This isn't just history. This is evidence. She crossed her arms. And what do you plan to do with it? Buy your conscience clean. No, he said firmly. I plan to burn the lie to the ground. Silence filled the room. People will come for this, Wren said. Powerful people. I know, Miles replied. Including people inside my own company. Her gaze searched his face, looking for hesitation. There was none. You don't owe us anything, she said quietly. He met her eyes. I owe the truth, and so does my name. Outside, the wind rattled the windows, carrying dust across land that had suffered in silence for decades. Beneath the earth, a secret had waited patiently. Now it had been unearthed, and once exposed to the light it would demand justice, even if it cost everything. Like, share and subscribe for more stories like this, and watch out for part 2.